Well, hello there, Mr. Bowman. How are you?
Well, hello there, Mr. Viola. The question is, how are you and how is your foot? I'm sure everybody wants to know.
I'm absolutely good. I was going to say great. But I can't say that. No, I'm doing really well.
Good.
Everything is back under control.
Yeah.
And everything seems to be healing nicely. So I'm about 90%.
Good. You're dancing for him yet? You pretty much can get out there.
I could be talked into a dance or two. For sure.
A jig or two. Perfect.
Are you asking?
Well, I said, you thought I said, would you like to dance? But I said, you look fat in those pants. I'm sorry.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fishing Canada Live. I'm Angie. He's Pete. As you know, we have another great, exciting program for you tonight. This is our Remembrance Day edition of the show, tomorrow being Remembrance Day. So later on, we got some great Remembrance Day stuff and an incredible guest that we'll talk about here shortly. But there's a lot going on right now. A lot going on for sure.
I'm
sorry?
I said, you figure?
I figure. Before we get into that, though, Pete, and then I'll let you kind of run through the rest of the program. Our good friend Roland Martin, as most of you who hang out with us every day probably have picked up on our fishingcanada.com site, Roland tested positive for COVID-19 about 3 weeks ago. And he had 2 or 3 tests done, and they were all positive. And then he started feeling poorly, and he had all the symptoms that we read about and hear about. But he didn't crash.
I like Roland when he said, people, you got, like, you don't hear all the story because we just never tell all the story. But one point, Ange talked to Roland, and Roland was like sweating buckets. He was feeling like freezing cold in 80-degree weather, but he said, but I had no temperature. I had no fever. Ange is what he said. That's the best.
How did he come up with that?
I love that guy, man. He is so awesome.
But anyways, his oxygen levels were down to 82 at one point, which is pretty low.
Wow.
So it was looking pretty bleak, and then he started picking up, and he started feeling better, and then he got better each day, stronger, and symptoms started going away. And he called me yesterday morning, all excited. He said, Angelo, I'm COVID free. I beat that son of a bitch.
That is awesome. Good for him, man. Good for him. At 80 years old, 80-year-old man, and he beat it. And you know what he said? He attributed some of that to, I don't know how much, his doctor said was good. He was on an exercise plan and a bit of a diet beforehand, so maybe a month or two beforehand. So you know what, people? Exercise doesn't hurt you. Good diet, good food doesn't hurt you, and it can actually help you. So
it just goes to show you, right? Because he's in that age group where you get COVID, and it's a tough road.
Yeah,
he just spanked its butt, man. His wife Judy, because Judy got it as well.
Was she bad too, Ash? Did he say she was bad?
She didn't have any of the symptoms. She was asymptomatic. So
bizarre. That is bizarre. Half of us people here could have had COVID. We don't even know it. You know what I mean? Half of the people watching, we could have had it already.
Yeah, I would think so. Funny story about Roland when this whole COVID thing started, and at one point, I don't know whether you remember, but Florida was like it was like everybody had it, right?
Hotbed, yeah.
And we were just starting to talk about it here. Anyways, I was talking to Roland one day. And I said, so how you make it out down there with the COVID, the virus? There was a pause. He said, well, it's not bad. He said, what are you hearing? I said, what am I hearing? I'm hearing everybody's got it down there. No, we haven't got anything down here. I know you guys are really in trouble up there, though. Oh my God, like it must be terrible. We're fine. I said, you seriously? Yeah, with no mask down here. We're going out grocery shopping every day. Yeah.
Oh God.
Obviously, that was wrong. But anyways, he is back in great health and raring to get out and do what he does. Do what he does so well too. And he's on YouTube with that story as well. If you haven't been to his YouTube channel, check it out.
Yeah, he's got the full story right there. That is friggin' funny, man. Good for him. Pike story. What do you want to hear? Talk about that Pike story that came into us?
Yeah, but from Paul Moore.
Paul Moore, yeah. So Paul was commented to our website. He says, I just watched the video interview with Kim and Terry related to the muskie attack. You mentioned that muskie video that we had, the guests that we had on there with the muskie that attacked the person. He said, you mentioned if anyone heard of something similar to share the story with you. Back around 1970, 71, I was fishing with my dad and a friend at Seabird Lake in Alberta. It had been designated as Trophy Lake. It was known for some good-sized pike. We had just come back to shore with the boat and we're standing at the water's edge, emptying the tackle of the boat. There was a man in hip waders standing offshore at about 3 feet of water, right along the edge of a reed bed, casting further out along some weeds. Suddenly, he was yelling and moving quickly back to the shore in a bit of a panic. He had a pike come out from the reeds and got him on the thigh. Not the size of this muskie, but good enough size pike to leave a tooth pattern in the hip waders and putting holes right through. He even had water coming through the holes. He was lucky having the hip waders, so the leg was mostly protected from the bite. As you've said, not a common occurrence, but I can vouch that this has happened at least once before. That's with a pike.
Boy, that would get your attention, wouldn't it?
Oh, my
You're waiting
God.
around. And how many times have we done that? How many times have we gone waiting for pike? I mean,
what about you in that float tube?
How about in that float tube? Can you imagine if one of those things had come up and
those fins going around? They look like a couple of walleye, a couple of pickerel spawning there. Hands are going to grab one.
Wow, crazy. Great story. Thank you, Paul, for sharing
that was good.
I'm sure there's all kinds of other cases out there. We just don't hear about them.
Right? Oh yeah. Again, if anybody has any more, send us the stories. We'll read them out for you.
By the way, I was supposed to, at the very beginning of the program, mention a happy birthday wish to my grandson, Leo.
Leo!
12 years old.
12? Oh, my God.
And his brother was 13 yesterday, Orion. So it's party time at the Viola residence.
How close are their birthdays? A day apart?
A year and a day apart. I'm sorry.
Like the dates?
1 year and a day apart.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 year and a day.
Was that planned?
I have no idea. I wasn't there. So I don't know.
Jocelyn, was this planned?
Anyway, happy birthday, Leo.
Yes, happy birthday, buddy.
Okay, on the program tonight. First of all, let's just quickly go over what Gord is talking about. Gord Pyzer, Fish Talk. We're going to be talking trolling motor wisdom with the dock.
Absolutely huge subject. Okay, it really.
I got to tell you though, I'm pretty excited to have this subject because you and I may have a leg up on the dock on this one.
You figure
with that new Garmin Force we got. I think so.
I think we got a leg up on everybody except for those that use the same trolling motor as we do.
Finally.
Yeah, this will be an interesting one though, because then you'll be able to. I mean, for those shore anglers, there's a lot of people that don't need a trolling motor. We get that, but for those boat anglers, we can maybe enlighten you. If you don't have one, you should be getting one, etc. So it'll be a good piece. Stay tuned for that for sure.
You know what we got to do?
What we got to do?
We got it because we're going to talk about the poll here in a second. We got to do a poll. We got to ask people which item they feel is the most important for their fishing, and include trolling motor, sonar. Like we can come up with like 5 of the big items and see what they think about the most important one. I think
we might have that coming up in the coffer.
Yeah,
sure, I'm not sure. If not, let's do it for sure. I think it's a great one. Because you and I can have different answers on that. You know what I mean?
Of course. And it would, it'd be really difficult for me to narrow it down to one.
To pinpoint one, for sure.
Right? Might be able to maybe get it down to 2 or 3, but one? Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that would be insane. But
yeah. Good poll. Good one. I like that.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Want to remind folks, one more Mercury outboard motor before the year is up is going to be given away. A 2.5 4-stroke, beautiful 4-stroke technology Mercury Marine, giving another 2.5 away. That'll be 9, I believe we've given away, if I'm not mistaken, 9 or 10, whatever. And it's going very soon. So make sure you go to fishingcanada.com. Enter the contest absolutely free, no charge, and put your ballots in and see if you can win. The last winner was from Ontario, if I'm not mistaken. You picked that. It was a young lady, was it not, Mr. Bowen?
You are correct, sir. Yes, sir. You are correct, sir. And by the way, not too much is free in this world anymore. Would you say that's absolutely free to enter? What is free anymore in this world?
I'll tell you what's free. I mean, if that's not enough, I'll tell you what's free. You want how about a boat motor trailer? Free.
You got to be kidding me.
You want a boat motor trailer? Free. No charge. Nothing.
I can take that one home. It's parked in the back right now. I can take that home and nobody will pretend
all you'd have to do if you were capable, because you're not, because you're out, you're banned, is to go to fishcan.com and enter the boat motor trailer by Princecraft Marine, our wonderful partners, Princecraft. And that's going to be given away 15th of December, I believe, is the date. So that's very
soon. I think it's just around a month away.
How exciting is that going to be?
That's going to be.
We got to do something special with that one. We got to like have that person win it like live on air or something with us.
Okay.
Somehow.
How do you do that now?
I don't know.
Okay, Bill, you just won a motor, but we're not going to tell you, okay? So just be live and be tuned for the decision here.
You're the genius. You're the genius. You figure it out.
I'll figure that one out, okay. Bill, unfortunately, you won the boat, but you couldn't win the boat because Pete took it and ran away with it and went fishing for a year. Sorry.
All right, let's get to this week's poll, because I'm really excited about it. Not just because of the poll and what the poll is all about, but it's a great opportunity for me to be able to throw to that next segment as well. So the poll this week was, which East Coast province? Now, I don't know who came up with this, by the way. Was this one of yours, Peter?
This was a culmination of minds, knowing that our guest would be part of this.
Got you. Okay. Because I was wondering, because if I was in the other provinces, I'd be probably a little upset, right?
Yeah, I already asked all the other provinces, and they were all good with it.
By the way, I stand to be corrected. You know that.
Got reminded of something.
Huh?
You just got reminded of something, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You get slapped in the arse again, didn't you? What happened?
I did.
What?
We're putting the cart before the horse, because the horse is.
I wasn't going to let you go there. If you were going to go to this next thing,
right,
I wasn't going to let you go there.
Oh, really? Oh! How are you going to stop me?
Well, I was going to feel you out, because you got everybody here. We got the list of what's going to come up and what's not. And so Angelo just completely missed the doc right there. He just said, okay, we're going to talk to the doc about trolling motors. That Garmin's great. Okay. That was a good interview. Now let's go to Rick. So I was going to start and say, whoa. I would have put the brakes on you. I would have caught you, buddy. But what Angelo's trying to do is he wants to talk. That's coming after Gord is the nice poll question that's going to be out there pertaining to a certain part of Canada and leaving out some other parts of Canada that might be offended by it. But that will be later in the show.
All right. I shouldn't be driving. You should be driving this ship. I should be driving tonight.
I'm going to drive you home, buddy. You're going to leave your keys on your desk right here.
Time for a little fish talk, folks.
Hiya folks, Gord Pyzer here. I'm going to give you a little bit of trolling motor wisdom today. You know, you often see Ange and Pete, they'll be fishing in a heavily cottaged area with lots of boats and boat traffic going through. And yet when they're fishing, you'll often hear them say, guys, we got to stay as far back from the fish as possible. Be stealthy, make long casts. And you go, well, wait a sec. Those bass are living in those heavily congested boated areas. Why are they worrying about their trolling motor? They're so quiet. Here's the secret. It's been shown time after time that what spooks fish, walleye, bass, northerns, muskies, is when you hit the electric trolling motor and then stop. It's that boom, stop, on, off. If you're going to pick a spot apart, casting for muskies, bass, walleyes, or whatever, a slow, constant speed. That slow, constant speed never seems to bother them.
Hey, Doc, how you doing, buddy?
Very good.
I almost forgot about you tonight.
What? Yeah, he had a little brain fart there, Gord, but he's good now. He's good again. I think his poppy, he stuck his poppy in his brain, let a little leakage out there, and then he put it back in.
Speaking of poppies, now I gotta point this out. I gotta point this out. We've got our good friends reminding us here on the sidebar. Both of you gentlemen have your poppies on the wrong side.
I know, but I got my logo on this side, and I don't want to cover the logo up.
Put it underneath it.
Put it right here.
Come on top of it, beside it.
Okay, if you people really have to.
Well, if you're gonna do the deal, do the deal. You know what I'm saying?
Boy, oh boy, is that a tough
Wow.
crowd? Sheesh.
Hey, that's quite the shirt you got, Doc.
Yeah, largemouth bass. That's
Wow.
cool,
I
eh?
love it.
Good Lord. Nice.
It was 20 degrees here on Sunday. And of course, I'm one of those guys where the rain, the cloud is always on top of my head. I took the boat into the marina, had it winterized on Friday, and it went to 20 on Sunday.
Now, didn't you have snow like last week?
It went to 20 now, just not that far to the west, in western Manitoba, like about 4 hours away. They got 65 centimeters of snow.
Oh my
We're sitting
God.
right on the right side of that cold front moving through.
Wow.
Oh,
Well, Gordy, if it makes you feel any better, I caught 5 largemouth yesterday.
Oh,
Or on Saturday. So there you go, buddy. I'll make you feel better.
but I winterized. I was getting all my stuff. We'll talk about it a bit later, about the ice hut.
Yeah.
After we talk about trolling motors, and I know you guys are going to rub some salt in the room.
You heard that. He knew that was coming, didn't he?
I was listening before I got on here.
Well, you know what? It's a great point. What Gord's piece there, if everybody heard it, it's a great point in that it's all about, first off, let's talk about how important a trolling motor is to us before we even get into the noise. I think we all know, us 3 guys here, and probably the majority of the audience that's watching right now knows how important an additional electric trolling motor is on your boat. Not a little kicker motor in the back. That's important too, but it's a whole different story than what we're talking about, right?
What do you mean additional?
An additional motor, like you're putting an electric motor on your boat along with your big motor, right? Okay. Yeah. So you're adding another motor on there, and it's electric, and that can be bow mount or it can be a transom mount as well, right? Because they're both very good tools at what they do.
Absolutely, Pete. But we can't. It's so funny. I was listening to you guys talking before I came on here about, if there was one item, I'm not sure if I could decide anymore. When I think about sonar units, electric trolling motors, things like anchor systems with talons, and it's absolutely amazing now. I hate to say this. I was actually thinking the very first house I ever bought. I was working with M&R up in North Bay, and I bought it. We bought it from the local pharmacist in North Bay. It was a beautiful house. The 4 sonar units I got in my boat today are worth half the price I paid for that house.
That is so true, eh?
We can't live without it.
No, it is so.
And another one that we kind of take for granted, not only in fishing but in life in general. And I can't even imagine spending one day without this, and that is GPS. Like, how would we get from point A to point B anymore?
Well, you know what? We would be the lucky ones because we've used paper maps in past, so we could pull that off as long as they were available. The younger people today that have never seen a paper map, they look and say, "Oh, what's up with that?" They wouldn't know. You know what I mean? They say, "Okay, what am I going to do here?" And I can see it on the map. How do I get there? You know what I mean? So we've done our triangulation and all that kind of stuff, but they might be in trouble with that one for sure. So.
Pete, I grew up. I can remember when the first red and green boxes came out, and really? I honest truth, I can remember the days when we used to have Javex bottles, and we put 10, 12, 14 feet of line on them. And if you had 4 or 5 Javex bottles, and you knotted 10 feet on each one and threw them over the side of the boat and let the wind drift in. You now had marker buoys laying over the 10-foot, 12-foot, whatever contour. And I say that to my grandson today, and he goes, before sonar, are you kidding? Like, this is dinosaur era.
But think about how smart that is, what you did there. Because I've never heard of that. I've heard of marking and all that, but I've never heard of specific depth marking like that. That's brilliant.
And then you control it. Now I control between 4, 6, 8, whatever number of Javax bottles I threw out. I just throw them out over the side of the boat, let the wind carry them in, and eventually they hit bottom. And now you laid out a 10-foot. Now,
that's awesome.
That was 1980s sonar.
Yeah, no kidding. Boy,
we did it. We certainly did it and managed to do it and learned how to make do with what we had, right? So, which brings me to something before I know we're getting way off topic, but trolling motors could fall in the same category. I wonder if it's an advantage or a disadvantage to have seen the primitive side of this technology as it was being born. Is it a disadvantage for us?
I think
I'll say no.
Huge advantage.
Yeah. If one of those items drops out on you for whatever reason, blow a fuse, and you don't have a replacement fuse in your trolling motor. If you blow a fuse in your fish finder or something like that, all of a sudden you've got some kind of knowledge, some back knowledge that you can deal with. I think that's my opinion, anyways.
Yeah. I don't know. I the only reason I say that, you put us beside some hotshot young anglers. Well, the Johnsons, okay. And you put a new piece of technology in front of them and us that we grew up, before this technology, we were using something else. I wonder how difficult it is for us to make that leap and transition as opposed to them, because they're born in it. They're born into this technology, right? So for them, it's got to be. And listen, they're never going. Chris or Corey Johnson is never going to triangulate a mid-lake hump with a barn on that shore and a tree over there. No, if they don't have their electronics, they're done. They're not going to go trying to figure out triangulations and stuff. So I don't know. I'm glad I was born in an era where we saw the primitive part of this stuff, because to me it makes it that much better to see where we've come.
Yeah.
And,
the other thing, Ange, I'm kind of like you. It's exciting. It's exciting to see the younger guys. And I include my grandson and Jeffy Gustafson. I grew up fishing with Jeffy, and he used to run all over the boat. And same with my grandson. They hit keys. They do things. They're out there, and he's saying to me all the time, "Look at what I." And I'm going, "How'd you do that?"
Exactly.
That's trust.
Exactly. That's my point.
True.
That's my point. They just jump into this stuff. We have to kind of, wade our way through first, right? So,
but we're better. We're still better than, I would say, and this is, I know we're way off topic now. The biggest mistake folks make with sonar, I do not care what unit you make, turn it off automatic. And start using, you pay that huge amount of money for the unit, and it's because it will do amazing things for you. That's the reason you paid the money. Take it off automatic and learn how to use it. And that's where the kids are so good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Let's get back to trolling motors. What can we talk about trolling motors here? Obviously the choices out there right now. We'll talk about bow mounts for now, but we get into more, maybe the transom stuff too. 12, 24, and 36 volts. That's what's available out there.
And by the way, soon beyond 36 volts.
Did you hear that? Where have you heard that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Soon beyond 36.
Because I've noticed that. So on our Princecraft boat here, we run 36 on the Garmin Force, and on my boat, I run 2 batteries, 24 volts. So that trolling motor, just to let everybody know, I don't know if other companies do this, but that Garmin, you can hook up to 24 or 36. You don't have to change anything. Just put them on there and have your series batteries going, and you're good to go. But I'll tell you what, on 24 volts, that thing rips. I am totally surprised at how strong the new motors at 24 volts are.
Well, they're brushless, right? The brushes. I mean, think of the concept. Now this is our era, right? This is how we figured it all out. We need to put brushes around this piece of lead and winding, and those brushes have to perform a certain function by keeping it stable in between all of the magnets and you're putting force on this thing that wants to spin, but you're crushing it, so you're holding it back. Well, now they've eliminated that completely. So just that part alone, having it freewheeling as opposed to being surrounded by a magnetic force that's pushing in on it all the time, that alone will give you, I don't know, 10 times the power.
Yep.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way, for sure.
Oh, and I mean, the brushless technology now, I would say within maybe 2 years, you won't have any of these motors with brushes. Doesn't make sense.
No.
It's not logical.
Everything is going that way anyways, right? Yeah. All tools are going that way. Everything you see it all brushless. Because you know what? They run more efficiently. They last longer on a battery charge, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of pluses to a brushless motor versus the old style brushes. So.
And sound. And you mentioned sound in your piece, Gord. So this is a perfect throw to that. They're so much quieter today, those motors.
Unbelievably quiet, but still, Pete raised a really good point that I wanted to come back to before I get to sound, and then I'll jump right back in there. But I get asked so often, should I get 12, 24, 36? And as a general rule, for the folks that are listening in, as a general rule, and it's the same with Sonar, you should get as high, as powerful as you can. As you can afford. If you can afford 24 over 12, it's far better to do it. You may only run your batteries down half the way over the course of a day, or not even half. And same with 36. If you can afford 36 and your boat's big enough, I mean, there are some boats, most of what we run, we do have to have 36 in them. But if you can afford 36 and you really only need 24, it's still a better deal to always max up. It's like putting the maximum horsepower on the back of your boat. Rarely are you going to put the pedal to the metal and go full speed, but you've got it. You can cruise, and it just lasts you all day. And the other quick thing I would say, and I've only started using them the last year or two, are the NiCad, the new batteries, the lithium ion. Trust me, in 5 years from now, and they will be light years ahead. Yeah. But you know what? They guarantee them for 10. They will tell you silently they will likely last you for 20 years. Yeah, you're going to pay $2,000 for them, but they will last forever. We're only going to buy probably 1 or 2 batteries for most of our boats forever. And crazy.
Great point.
And the weight issue there, is even worth more than the longevity. I mean, they're weighing, some of these things are weighing 15% of a conventional lead core battery. 15% for comparing power to power, right? So you can't beat that, and that translates to more efficiency and more energy and all that stuff. So
and you got to sorry, Gord, as well, people, for these lithium batteries we're talking about, is in a normal lead battery, you're buying, if you don't run 36, you're buying 3 lead batteries. And these lithiums, you can buy 1 battery that's 36 volts. Yeah. Big difference.
And Pete, if you get 2-3 years, the way we run our boats, if you get 2 years out of a standard lead battery, that's a long, you've got 36 volt, they average probably $250. So you're spending about $700 or so every 2 years. And so compare that to a $2,000, $3,000 lithium ion that's good for 10, likely 20. But the really cool thing I found about them is when you draw them down, they don't get slower and slower. They stay as powerful until they have nothing left.
Yeah.
They drop out in a hurry, but
did they ever
charged until they've got nothing left?
Yeah.
And they also charge up back in a hurry too, which is the other nice thing. If you don't have the luxury of being able to put them on your a charger for overnight, for example, you can get a pretty good charge in a 36 volt and even a 12 volt crank battery for that matter, in a couple of hours. Right.
Yeah.
So it's there's all kinds. Listen, none of us are making money with this endorsement that we're giving you. We're just talking to you about our own experiences. We've been running lithiums now on FNC1 for about 5 years, Pete.
Yeah.
Maybe 6.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I could never dream of going back to lead core. Now, granted, if your boat is being used extensively during the winter months, or into the winter months when it's really cold.
Right now. So this next cold spell we're going to have, and the open water in Quinte is a perfect example. Go ahead.
They are not, let's put it this way. The advantages that lithium have over lead core all of a sudden starts diminishing, and they become, almost the same, if not worse than a lead core. We had a problem with one of ours because they have little computers in them. I don't know whether you're aware of that or not, but they have little computers in them. And sometimes the cold puts that computer to sleep overnight and has a hell of a time waking up in the morning. So we've been caught with that. But it does come back. But so anyways, for really cold conditions, they haven't quite figured it out yet. But
I think the majority of users are down in the U.S., right? A lot of the bass fishermen, the bass boats, et cetera, et cetera. So they haven't really got a whole lot of field testers out here in this plus 3 to 10 degree, weather or less. But that's when your water's going to freeze a little bit. But we did notice it on Quinte last year on our running battery. It was the gauges. We were starting to get a warning in that, and we called lithium, and they said this is what it was, is the cold weather. So
I didn't realize that. It's good to know.
Yeah,
especially for you, Gordy, when you're up there.
Yeah.
Well, mine's in bed right now in the garage.
But it's so unusual for you, though, isn't it? Aren't you the last guy in the neighborhood with the boat out on the water still and getting frozen in, and you have to hack the ice away to get it up on the trailer?
But I put my big boat to bed, and I have my little, 12, 14, 16 with the 5, 8, and the smaller. Actually, now it's a 20. But and then we'll break ice. And the biggest muskie I ever landed in my life was November the 28th. This year, unlikely. I'll be ice fishing in the next 2 weeks.
So your prophecy is looking like it's going to come true, because you've been saying that for a while now, that it was going to be an early and cold winter up in your neck of the woods. Here, obviously down here, not so much, right? So far.
Not early, Ange. To be honest, it's going to be late. I'm normally ice fishing tomorrow within the next 5-6 days, and it's skimmed across a lake here in town, Lawrenson Lake, which a lot of folks are, and it's a fair size, medium sized little lake, but it skimmed across on Saturday, opened up again in that 20 degrees on Sunday. But we went down to -11 last night. It's getting up to 0, but we are in ice making conditions now.
Oh boy!
All right, let's talk sound. Trolling motors and sound. We're getting way off topic tonight. You mentioned in that great little piece that you did that it's less disruptive to have a steady trolling motor sound in the fish's environment, as opposed to on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. Why do you say that?
Well, I think most folks they want to get up to where they want to be as fast as they can. And so they, boom, get up there, stop. And then they drift by, boom, get up there, stop. And that's the worst thing you can do. It's, believe it or not, as a general rule, far better to keep your trolling motor running. So, if I'm on a spot, I'll try and find, I call it slipping, but I like to always be pointed into the wind, and I'll keep my electric running at just enough speed to kind of hover me in one spot, and then I'll pick away at where I want to fish, or I'll vertically jig. But it's far, far better to do that than to rush up and then hit it off and think, well, I'm doing the fish a real advantage. They don't know I'm here now. And then I drift away and then boom, rush back up. Yeah, it's far better to have it side.
So the anchor mode.
I was just going to say that.
For instance, our anchor mode it's might be constantly running, but it's never running at the same speed. It's always vying for a new position. If there's wind, turn a little bit up and up and down. What about that? Let's say it's on all the time, but it's changing frequencies all the time. What would you say to that?
It's my favorite as well, Pete. To be I'll troll a contour, I'll put an E path in and then let it run for 2 miles and it'll follow, 12 and a half feet deep. And if I'm pulling slow depth, that's the absolute ideal, because then you're on cruise control. But I think anchor mode, spot lock, all of those, that is the way to go. But when you're in those modes, it rarely lets you drift back, say 100 feet, and then rolls you back up, and it kind of silently does. It's kind of doing what we were talking about in the video, though. It's trying to keep you.
I'll tell you, this new Garmin Force, not to go name dropping again here, but I'm so excited about it. It's eliminated that problem. I think with this motor, you can go on and off all day long. It ain't going to bother anybody. I mean, it is so whisper quiet, Gord.
Let me show you. I'm going to show the audience the foot pedal to this Garmin Force, if you can see this thing. This thing is like the most futuristic looking thing you've ever seen in your life. Like, look, check this out. There's a speed control. The speed knob is here, and it's all electronic. You have I can't see, I'm going backwards here. The anchor button, you hit that, and you're anchored. You have a constant on button. You just hit it once with your foot, constant on. You have a cruise control button like that, and then of course it's electronic as compared to the old one. So you can adjust the tension. There's a screw to adjust the tension on it. It's like it is such a nice pedal to work on. It looks futuristic. It looks like something out of a Terminator movie. But man, has it ever worked good? It's just like, and it's very easy to get used to. Ange and I thought we were going to have a hard time getting used to it, because we've come from cable drive foot pedals. We came from motor guide, which is on the right. The switch is on the right hand side of the pedal. This is on the left hand side of the pedal. You know, no time the transition came, and it was as easy as can be. So the other thing we use, another tip you should keep in mind, is if your trolling motor comes with a remote, okay, you should use that too. You should have both in combination. You should have that around your neck, under your life jacket, because you're always wearing a life jacket, correct? And then you can use both, because there's a couple of features on this remote. On this Garmin, for instance, let me get it close to the camera again. These little arrow keys right here. So when we're anchored, so you push the anchor button, which is that one right there. It's holding us in a certain position, right? So now we're just, the boat is kind of like I seen with Gord, a little bit moving here, but it's staying pretty much on a GPS fixed position. And Ange and I do this all the time. So we're done that little area. We fish it for a few minutes. We want to move over 5 feet. Well, if you hit that foot pedal, you turn on, you have to take the anchor mode out. You have to move over. You have to put the anchor mode back on. With this thing, you'd say, okay, I want to move to the right 5 feet. You hit that button once, you move 5 feet. If you hit twice, you move 10 feet. 3 times, you move 15 feet, and it locks you back up. It is an amazing feature. It's called jogging. It's on a jogging, but it has saved us so much time. So many assholes out there.
And even in current, Gord, it compensates when it goes to jog, and because it's fighting a current. Let's say you're in the river, you can hear it compensating, because it just goes in a straight line over. There's no drop back. There's no nothing. It's incredible. And it's how anybody could fish without an electric motor nowadays is beyond me.
And by the way, we don't know every feature on that thing yet. Ange and I we got it down to 3/4, but there's still a couple we don't know.
It'll be a while practicing in the garage all winter long.
I was just like, talk to those young guys; they'll show you how to do it.
Exactly.
Of
for sure.
So let's talk about using trolling motors. You mentioned something earlier on. You can't fish unless you have boat control. There's absolutely no way. It doesn't matter what you use to have boat control. You cannot fish effectively without boat control. And I don't even care if you're drift fishing. You still need some form of control, right? And that's where the electric motor really comes in and is worth its weight in gold. It's not what most people perceive it to be, and that is a piece of technology that's used to propel the boat. It's to control the boat. It keeps the boat where you need it. Talk to us about that.
Well, Ange, it's so critical. you raise such a good point. I don't call them trolling motors.
No.
That's to me, that's old fashioned. They're an electric motor, and it is exactly what you said, boat control. It's not for trolling, it's to control the boat. Now, there are some times you do want to troll, and for that reason, yeah, you troll them, but boat control is the critical element. Spot lock, anchor, trolling a contour line. Some of them let you dial right in. I can dial in if I lay out a 3/4 mile track. I can dial in a contour map, and it follows my map on the unit. And again, I'll be honest. I'm not going to mention names, but folks should buy whatever they can afford. It's so important. I mean, if the best you can do, and I don't mean this in any disparaging way, if the best you can do is a handheld at the back of your a handheld is the way to go. If you can, and in fact, there are some times I have a handheld on the back of a little boat that I use. It's deadly for back trolling. I've got the handheld forward on one of my aluminum boats as well, little 16-footer. It's superb. But think about foot control, hand control, a transom mount, a bow mount, and get what suits because Ange, you are so critically correct. Boat control it's everything.
Yeah, it's everything
of what we do.
So I got to ask you this question because you've spent most of your fishing career in Northern Ontario, and you know probably as many guides that fish Northern Ontario as anybody else that I know. And Pete and I have spent equal amount of time in that same area, and I would say 9 out of 10 guides that are fishing in some of these pristine, wonderful, they don't have a trolling motor. They use their combustion engine, and they leave it running all day long. And all they do is just put it in neutral, bang, forward, back, forward. The West Coast, the same thing. And yet here we are talking about a specialized tool to do that, an electric motor. Why?
I think some of them, Ange, I think on the fly-ins, it's a question of how do you, if you're a lodge that's got 20 boats or 15 boats and you're trying to charge those up every day, I'm assuming, if you've got a diesel generating system and you're off the grid, that's probably problematic for them. But there's no question about it. If I'm in a tiller and you're in your boat with an electric, you're going to cream me. I do not. We can be using the same rod, same reel, same bait, fishing the same locations. You're going to beat me.
Yeah, and yet you talk to these guys, Pete and I. A lot of times we'll go into these places. We get real nervous when we see a guide, with a big, a 150 on the back of a big Alaskan 20-footer. And he just keeps it running the whole time, even when they're vertically jigging and stuff, that motor's running all day long. And I go crazy. I go absolutely nuts. But hey, Pete, that's what they do. They say, no, it doesn't bother the fish. No, the fish are okay. They don't worry about it.
When we do a fly, when Ange and I do a fly, and we always we ask them if they have any batteries, boat batteries, car batteries, 12 volt batteries. If so, do you mind if we bring our transom mount trolling motor in as well? And they said, no, absolutely, bring it in. And we stick that right beside the big motor. We put the gas motor, we just get just enough room where we can stick that on there. We put our portable fish finder suction cup on the other side there on the transom. And when we get to the spot, you use the big motor to get there. And then all of a sudden she's shut down, and it's so convenient. If you were to try and hold on a hump or something for walleye, it is so convenient to just have that little turn, just a little bit, and it's just so quiet, and you don't have to restart your motor. There's a lot of pluses to having a trolling motor in the back of a boat, for sure, with fishing.
Unquestionably, Pete, and you've seen the occasions, especially speckled trout, when they come up shallow, smallmouth bass. I mean, there are times, no question about it, there are times you can run your big and I always remember Ron Lindner. We were fishing in KBI against each other, and we were fishing the same spot. And Ronnie happened to get just a little bit too close, had his big motor. Now, it wasn't running, he was on the electric, but the big motor hit the reef. And he started catching bass, and he's convinced he woke those fish up. But you don't want to go waking fish up and expect that's not the normal. That's the exception to the rule. And I've seen smallmouth where I picked a rod up to make a cast, and as soon as I picked that rod up, that fish it vanished. And you've stepped on the old, those noisy old motors that we had, and you go, and all of a sudden that fish is gone. You want to try it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we've talked about it on this program before about sound and noise, and how there are cases where we know for a fact that a sound will attract some of these game fish. It'll get their attention, but like you just said, man, I wouldn't want to play that game every day. You know what I mean? I'm just not that good.
No. Hey, Ans, you used to do a lot of canoe fishing. What about a motor on a canoe, electric motor on a canoe?
I think canoes even more so. I think canoes probably even more so than any other type of vessel for whatever reason. Maybe it's the environment that we use a canoe in. It tends to be a little more pristine, quiet, flat, calm, all, out in the outback. Noise is just super important. I believe, now this is just me, okay? This is years of going into the bowels of Algonquin Park. I believe that if there is a case to be made where an electric motor will spook fish, now, not today's electric motor necessarily, but electric motors in general, it's in that application. An outback lake on a canoe, and that motor start, stop. I think in some of those little tiny, crystal clear, pristine little potholes, I think it spooks fish big time. Even just your strokes. When you hit the side of the boat with your paddle, and you can see the fish spooking, especially specks like you just mentioned, Gordy. And those things, as soon as you inadvertently touch the side of the canoe with your paddle, when you stroke, they're gone. They're not just gone; they're gone.
They're good.
They're not gone like a couple of feet, like bass we chase, right? Where you're okay, I'll come after you. All right, you're making it hard to get. No. When they're gone, and they're not gone for an hour. They're gone for the day. So you can't afford that.
We talked about something really interesting last week when we were talking about trolling and fish coming back behind. Your point. I did my master's thesis in Algonquin Park. And I lived in Algonquin in the backcountry out of a canoe from April one year, from April until October. I lived out of a canoe and a tent. Wow. And we talk about trolling through, and we were paddling. I was paddling. But we would troll, and we were fishing on a Saturday or a Sunday, a day off, and we were lake trout fishing. We were fishing with 200 feet of line behind the boat. And you pull a short line after that canoe's gone over top, they're not coming back. You troll slowly and with 200 feet of mono coming behind if you're in 5, 6, 7 feet for specks and lake trout.
Wow.
Now, Pete, the other thing is too, keep in mind, this is an environment that has never had motors on it. It just you can't run motors on it. So I think maybe the fish there might be a little more puck shy, as they say. In a normal environment, maybe not as much, but there, any sound, all they're used to is natural sounds.
Right.
When you introduce something that's not natural, man, they just boom, they're just gone.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They're wild animals.
You're right. They're wild animals, for sure.
I'm not going to commit suicide here real quick.
Good point. So was there any good, Mikey, did you see any good questions at all about trolling motors or anything pertinent kind of? Steve Yukovich said 99% of my fishing is done out of a canoe, and what Ange says is 100% true. Let's see that.
I don't know what it is, man, but out of a canoe, everything. you just, and we used to do this all the time, right? You, by accident, you drop a spoon. You're trying to put a spoon on your line, and for whatever reason, it drops. And especially in the old Grumman canoes, the aluminum canoes. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Not only did they spook in that lake, but the lake next door got spooked too. Crazy.
What is Ken Johnson there? He says 16 foot is my little 12-foot roof topper. Myers Laker must be a baby. LOL. I use my 6 horsepower in idle for trolling. Yeah. I mean, obviously, certain times you can do it, right? I mean, the gas motors work for trolling. It's been done for 100 years or however long they've been around for. I mean, maybe not 100.
Like I said, and up north, they're using 100, 120, 150 horsepower motors for that.
Yeah.
So, we're sometimes we are a little bit overboard. I realize that we are, and this might be a case in point. But I got to tell you something. I cannot believe that under everything being equal, one angler is super stealthy. One angler makes all kinds of noise. I cannot believe that the angler that makes noise is going to outperform the angler who's very conscious and quiet. That's all I'm saying. The more stealthy you can be, the better your chances.
Yep.
The other thing is they're not. It's standard equipment. The price is coming down every year. Yes. They're getting better and better and better. There's all the options we talked about: 12, 24, 36, hand controlled, foot controlled, remote controlled. It really too is our advantage. If we're really, really keen on catching fish, you cannot live without one. And they do make the job easier. We can build a house with a hatchet and a couple of nails.
Of course you can.
You're to build it with good tools.
Good point.
Good point. You people that are watching the latest in trolling motors, our Garmin Force included, you can control that trolling motor off your fish finder as well. You get it all set up, and you can just sit there. And if you want to, if you wanted to have a coffee break and somebody else was fishing up front and you're the one showing them where to go. Hey, buddy, okay, just hang a sock. Okay, go cast that way. You can do it. It's getting very convenient.
Tim makes a good point here. What do you guys think of the new all electric boats?
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Everybody's trying to electric motors on boats. The solar powered. Princecraft was playing around with one. They had the panels on above the rear of the boat and all that stuff. I think it's a great idea. Obviously, if we haven't bought in yet to the fact that we need to look at alternative energy sources, then we're all asleep at the switch. Problem with outboard motors right now, we just don't have. In a car, it's doable because the car can carry an extra 1,000 pounds of weight and offset it with the benefits of running from solar power. A boat can't do that yet. You put an extra 1,000 pounds on any boat, and I don't care how much sun you got, it ain't going to go anywhere. Right? So that's the problem.
The other interesting thing, is hydrogen, and they're looking at some of these new sources of fuel, hydrogen fuel, natural gas, some things like that. Always remember, though, my father-in-law, he ran the largest industrial hardwood mill in Ontario. They built the first bowling alleys with maple and ash from Ontario in Japan. And he also told me that in terms of things like chainsaws, gas-run engines are really explosions that are occurring. And electric motors, as a general rule, electric is always efficient and effective. And there's never as many moving parts. And if you can do things electrically versus gas, it was always a better option. And so it'll be exciting to watch what's coming in terms of hydrogen fueled. But you're absolutely right, Andrew. I can't imagine the size of the battery needed to push one of our boats.
Oh my God.
Barry Ross wants to know, is it better to back troll with a transom motor or work it into the wind?
Now, Barry, I'm not sure if you're talking about, but I guess this really doesn't matter. I was going to say you're talking about electric motors versus gas. But we grew up back trolling. Back trolling is an amazingly effective way. And I'll back troll often in my smaller boats with the transom electrics. Now, not only is it quiet, but I can hover the boat. I can do things anytime I'm backing up into the wind, and I've got wave whackers on the back of the boat. If you haven't back trolled, we grew up doing it, and it's a great way to fish. You know what, though? Trolling forward now with electric trolling motors, the things we can do, boy, it's hard to beat going forward. Hard spot locking.
We have so many options now, Gord.
We do. It's amazing.
You know, you hear people saying, well, it's an unfair advantage, an unfair, I'm starting to kind of believe it. I mean, and I don't mean that in a smart-ass sort of way, because at the end of the day, you still have to get fish into the boat, right? It's one thing having all these tools. It's one thing knowing how to use them. It's one thing, but at the end of the day, you still have to hone your skills, to get these fish in the boat. However, having said that, anybody who will not agree that fishing today is 100 times easier than it was 20 years ago, then they're not even fishing, or they're living in a fantasy land, because it is. We talked about one thing earlier on, the GPS. Just that alone. I mean, most people that are, that were born anytime after 1970 can't even imagine how we got around lakes without GPS.
And our GPS 10 years ago, 15 years ago, was better than Apollo 13. Can you imagine today? Now, here's the honest truth. So last year, I'm out fishing, ice fishing, and I've got GPS built in. I've got a really good ice unit as well. It's got GPS in it. I GPS to my waypoint. I drill a hole on my waypoint. This will blow your mind. I put my sonar unit on the waypoint. I mark a fish, and it's suspended about 15 feet off the bottom. I put my jig down. I start jigging. I got it. I pulled up a marker buoy I forgot I left out at last ice. Are you kidding me?
That's the best fish story ever. No fish story.
Holy mackerel.
So does GPS work? I honest truth, I couldn't. It had algae growing on it, and
Wow.
I put big chains on my one of the chains had caught up, and it had pulled. It hadn't unraveled properly.
Yeah.
I caught my own marker buoy.
Wow.
What a great story. If that's not a testament to GPS, nothing is.
And it also says something to what you were talking about. We're getting too good. And I've said this many, in the old days, you and I, Pete's a little bit younger than us, but in the old days, you and I would go out and we'd spend 8-9 hours looking for fish and 1 hour catching them. And now we spend 10 hours catching.
Isn't that the truth, eh? Isn't that the truth?
Great point.
Yeah.
Great.
That's bang on. That's bang on.
Anything else? Anything else, Mikey? We can enjoy our audience's participation here. Here we go. What is a good transom mount unit? I tried a couple of 30-pound thrust 12-volt on a kayak. Ended up getting water into the unit and seizing it. Wow. Won't say brand in case it was a one-off. That is weird, because normally you could drop them in the lake for 2 days and bring it back up and it'll still work. I mean, once it dries out, it's electronics, right? So
I hope you took it back or sent it back to the manufacturer, because that's definitely a warranty issue without question.
Oh yeah.
They're so watertight now. Man,
and we'll say this and we're not talking you know what, the brands, at least the reputable brands, are good. And point edge, if something doesn't work, most of them will, send it in and they replace it pretty. I mean, it's a tough it's a tough grind out there. So nobody wants bad press. Nobody wants
Exactly.
they look after you.
I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier nowadays to get service like that than it was back in our days. Back in our days, you call them up, say, hey, listen, I bought this thing and it's not working too good. And if you got the guy on a bad day, good luck with that. Today,
Roland motor, buddy, sticker. How about today, Ken said he tried a couple of 30-inch trolling motors, and he said he got water. I don't know if they both seized up on him or just one. I mean, he asked what a good transom mount unit is. And normally what you got there, especially on a kayak, 30-pound thrust is all you really need. I don't think you need a long shaft on them either, to be honest. I know some kayaks are built so that they have the actual trolling motor in front of the angler, recessed away down in there. It's a very cool looking system. I don't know who makes it or what it is, but it was pretty neat looking too. But it's a whole different ball game than a transom mount on that.
Believe it or not, 30 pounds is pretty good for a kayak.
Oh yeah,
30. You're getting pretty well maxed out on power.
Yeah,
anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Dee's got a great question. She wants to know, what's your preference, trolling or still fishing? Still fishing. That's interesting. When was the last time you were doing any of that, Gordy?
I can't remember the last time I heard it called still fishing. But in fairness, one of my favorite ways is slip bobber and bobber rig. And here's something interesting. We make a mistake. You talk to the best fly fishermen. You talk, and this is for D, you talk to the best fly fishermen on the planet, and they will talk about indicators. You talk to the best steelheaders, and they talk about floats. You talk to the best walleye guys, and they'll talk about slip bobbers. And you know what? That's how we all grew up fishing. And there's a way to refine the old round bobbers that we grew up with, but the fly guys call them indicators. Well, guess what? It's nothing more than a bobber.
Exactly.
They call it an indicator, and the steelhead guys call them floats. But the best steelheaders in the world are still, in terms of what Dee said, they're still fishing in a sense.
Yeah.
It's a great question. And how often do we vertically jig over the side of the boat for walleyes, smallmouth, drop shotting? I consider that modern day still fishing.
One of the, I think one of the most enjoyable outings that I've had in my entire life. Pete and I were in Saskatchewan float fishing for giant northerns.
Oh my God.
And I've got to tell you, man, that was some of the best fishing on the planet, and it'll never be replicated. It was the perfect storm, Gord, right? These fish were all hunkered down into a little cut that was, maybe the size of a 10 by 10 bedroom. And it was an indent in this long tapering point, slow, long tapering point. And they obviously had been coming up from the deep and working this point, and then they found this little cove that was just full of food, and every 20-pound plus pike was in it in the lake, and we had them all to ourselves, and we were like two kids, 8 feet, like we were giddy.
We still talk about that trip, and I will still say that is the best open water pike fishing I've ever had in my life. Tobin Lake, Saskatchewan.
Tobin. And Gord, it was flat, and we could see them. And we could see these big, huge, like 5 foot long torpedoes. And they weren't in a hurry. None of them were in a hurry. They were just sort of meandering, because they were just, every once in a while, you'd see a lot of silver down there. So they'd be slashing away at their food, right? But we were so excited. We were like little kids. We spent most of our time just giggling. It was insane. Incredible episode.
But you proved the point, guys, out of float tubes, quiet, stealthy. They didn't know you were there, and you had the best experience of your life.
Oh, fantastic.
It was crazy. And it was late in the year. It was dead bait. We were running baits. We had one bait. I can't even put my hands up. Like, you won't even be able to see how there was frozen bait. They went to the store, frozen herring and mackerel, whatever. But then they got these 2 or 3 of these one-ofs, 3 ofs, let's just say. They said, we bought these just to try. And they were like a foot long at least, frozen, stiff as a board. threw that out there on a 3-foot hook, quick straight rig, and boom, straight down like it was nothing. Like, oh my God, it was insane. It was absolutely insane.
Oh,
Listen. I see that General Hillier is standing by. I want to say my dad was in the RCAF. He was a navigator, wireless air gunner, stationed out of England. My grandfather was awarded the Military Medal of Honor by the Canadian in World War I at the Battle of the Somme. And I would never steal time from Rick Hillier the day before Remembrance Day. It is one of the most important holidays in all of Canada, and it breaks me up even thinking about it. So I'm out of here, and General Hillier's in.
Gordy, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gordy.
We'll talk to you next week.
Next week, buddy. Nice.
Well, how appropriate, right? Let's throw the poll. This week's poll, we asked the question: which East Coast province is your favorite to fish or would like to fish? The choices: Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, or Newfoundland. And here's what you had to say. Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia wins by a little bit too, eh?
Yeah. And you know what? You can't blame anybody because it is a tremendous province for angling. I mean, so many different species of fish, freshwater, saltwater. I mean, it's got it all.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, for anybody who has not fished Newfoundland, it's in a totally separate category, and it's not just about the fish.
But what really sets Newfoundland apart is its people. Newfoundlanders are some of the kindest, most welcoming folks that you're ever going to meet. Of course, you're always a guest of honor when you're in the company of a celebrated Canadian hero. And I'm lucky to be here with one of Canada's greatest sons, retired General Rick Hillier, former Chief of Defense for the Canadian military, and a card-carrying Newfie. But this ain't just any how is you buy large tundra and stay where you're at and I'll come where you too run-of-the-mill Newfoundlander. No, this is General Rick Hillier, highest-ranking Newfoundland officer in Canadian history, Chief of NATO Stabilization Forces in Bosnia, Commander of the NATO-led International Security Force in Afghanistan, a best-selling author, a respected public speaker, Chancellor of Memorial University, and one heck of a cod-jigger to boot.
Cod jigger, look at him.
Hey, what can I say to that? Cod jigging is my favorite sport of all. My goodness.
Welcome to the show, Rick. Pleasure to have you here. As Gord just said before, the day before, probably, I think, in a lot of cases, the most important day in Canadian history, and certainly the most important holiday, if we can call it that. And here you are. What I believe is the most important person on Remembrance Day. You've done so much for the troops, both when you were leading them, but the part that most people don't know, you've done so much work behind the scenes since then in making sure that they get their just rewards. And you're on the cusp of doing something even more spectacular than just about anything you've ever done before for the troops. We're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. But it's an absolute honor.
And he's looking rather dapper, I might add, too. Right?
Yeah, really.
As I said to you guys, I just sit around the house nighttime dressed like this, right? It is the day before Remembrance Day. It is a Remembrance show, your episode for Remembrance. So I thought it only appropriate to wear, the decorations that my nation has awarded to me for that service, and as a representative then of all those incredible sons and daughters who served our nation. And Gord mentioned his father and his grandfather. My goodness, what a record of service in his family. The Battle of the Somme. You think about pure terror and loss and fear and fright, and Canadians served there and excelled and learnt lessons, which then enabled them just 6 months later to be enormously successful taking Vimy Ridge. I mean, that's where they learned the lessons. on what they were going to do and what tactics to use and how to tie the artillery to those tactics and how to move and fire in movement as opposed to just stand up and walk, and how to get up close to the enemy by using those tunnels and so many other things. They learned it at the Battle of the Somme, and then to be a wireless gunner and communicator on one of those aircraft. You imagine going over enemy territory, being fired at all the time by flak guns, night fighters waiting to come up and shoot you into little pieces, and doing it night after night after night after night.
Yeah.
Incredible service. What a legacy of service in his family.
And Rick, these were kids. These were kids. That's the other part that blows my mind. Every time I read something or watch something of that era and who was representing us and standing up for our freedom, were kids. These were young men, young ladies. They weren't people our age. They were kids.
Well, and the first thing is people our age can't handle that physical regime. You just cannot do it.
Yeah.
I remember one of my regiment's leaders from the war talking about, he said, we said the guys in the 4th Division, they were all old guys. Like they had battalion commanders who were 27, 28 years old. And we're looking around and saying, this really? Seriously? And the other thing is that you want young men and women because they're the ones who accomplish things, right? And so I said one time, if you take a young platoon commander, a man or woman commanding 40 soldiers, and you take a 20-year-old platoon commander and say, you and your platoon take that hill, and he'll take the hill or she'll take the hill with their platoon. And then once they get to the top, they might look around and say, hey, that was stupid. If you say that to a 40-year-old platoon commander, that platoon commander will stand with the platoon at the bottom of the hill and say, hey, that's stupid. You want the former, not the latter. You want somebody who will do the job and do it well and sees it, who has no regret. And that's youth. Youth is the bloodline of an army for sure.
I don't care.
When Rick was talking about when Gordy's ancestry people were in the wars and that, and the good part was to survive. That gunner is a survivor. He survived. His grandfather survived. Whatever. But I bet you the worst part, Rick, you know all about this, is all your friends around you have to try and think the same way, but you lose a lot of those friends too in that game, right? In real war, you're losing your.
Well, you do, and on Remembrance Day now, you think about those that lost. We had the war in Afghanistan. We lost a lot of fine young Canadians there. 158 soldiers killed there. We had more than 2,000 wounded physically, thousands more mentally, and you think about those also. Throughout our history, we have had 120,000 of Canada's sons and daughters who have given their life in service to Canada and to us, and to all three of us and our families and everybody else.
Wow.
And you think about those tomorrow, and you go to those British Commonwealth cemeteries in northern France and Belgium, and you see those cemeteries, and they're so neat and orderly and dignified and respectful and serene and devastatingly brutal, because there's just one after another of the graves of our sons and in some cases daughters, and say, hey, they gave us this awesome country, right? And we should remember that, because if we don't remember, we're often doomed to repeat the mistakes that happened before. We don't want to do that.
I've asked you on air before this question, Rick. I'll ask it of you again. Obviously, we just saw the outpouring of folks putting up messages on screen and how much respect they have for you and the Canadian soldiers and all that stuff. And I've asked you this before. How are we doing as a nation, though, on the global platform in terms of respecting our veterans and maintaining that sense of pride of what these young folks did for us? How do we match up to some of the other countries that had kind of the same history as we did?
Well, I think, first of all, most countries with which we soldiered, the Australians, the British, the Americans, and the French and Germans, we've all had difficulty in being able to give our veterans the same kind of support that our veterans gave us as a nation. And they signed that unlimited liability contract, and they lived up to that contract, sometimes losing their lives, sometimes being horribly wounded physically, and other times, as I mentioned, mentally. And they paid a terrible price for that. And we've not been particularly great at looking after them since. We're improving every day, I believe. I fundamentally believe that, but we've still got a heck of a long way to go. And sometimes it is not just the care itself and the programs itself. It is the psychology of not feeling valued. And I don't think we've had governments or ministers of Veterans Affairs or organizations that have made those veterans feel like their service was incredibly valued. And that then spreads throughout the veteran community. And you get people who feel smaller or feel they wasted their life in some respects. And we try to convince them that's not true. But you got to make them feel valued. We have not been successful at that.
To me, it's a no-brainer. I've told you this before. I don't understand any government or any official, any politician who would stand in the way of giving every possible support that's available to us for our veterans. And yet it happens all the time. You just mentioned it now. To me, it's a no-brainer. How can they close their eyes? How can they not? It doesn't make sense.
Well, it takes leadership to change that. Secondly, it's the energy of everyday life that catches people up. And thirdly, is those veterans are far from the eyes, far from view of the normal Canadian community. Most people don't even know a veteran. And if they hear of them, it's occasionally. And so we've not really been good at that. Rudyard Kipling, 100 and something years ago, wrote a poem about, during times of war, God and the soldier are both adored. And during times of peace, God and the soldier are both ignored. Well, we're in times of peace. The soldiers are not out there putting their life on the line in most cases. There are some exceptions. And as a result, they've kind of largely disappeared from the view of most Canadians.
Unbelievable.
There is no constituency that supports those veterans by and large because they've disappeared from view. And, there are some good programs and organizations out there. I do work with, True Patriot Love to try and support soldiers and their families with some awesome programs and let them know that the love is there, that the appreciation is there. But Team Rubicon Canada, that provides a way for veterans to come back together into the kinds of teams they had in the military and then help other Canadians or else people around the world during natural disasters such as hurricanes or tornadoes or earthquakes or the fire in Fort McMurray a couple of years ago, et cetera. Those kind of programs are worth their weight in gold. Like all charities, I think, in Canada right now with the pandemic, they're all suffering horribly from lack of funds, and a lot of them are close to disappearing. And with that, the support to those soldiers. So try to get those organizations on some kind of solid footing to go forward here because our veterans need them.
No doubt.
Pete, you and I have been very fortunate that we've had some connection with armed forces through the years, through our programs and whatnot. And I got to tell you, and I don't want to speak on your behalf, you're more capable of doing it yourself, but some of the most touching moments in my career, in our careers here with Fishing Canada Television, have involved our troops, have involved soldiers, have involved whether it's veterans or some of the kids who are in it now. Every time that we are in a scenario where there's a Canadian soldier involved, it's the most moving moment imaginable. These are special people. These are very special. Whether it's a 18-year-old kid at Meaford base training or a veteran who's been through a couple of wars, these are not ordinary people. So how they can be ignored is still just
and they treat us with the ultimate in respect, right?
Oh.
When Andy and I walk through where we work with any of these people, it's unbelievable. Like, yes, sir. No, like it's a different world. They are just so good-hearted people too, as you know.
Angelo and Pete, I had the privilege and delight throughout I was a soldier all my life. I still think of myself as a soldier, just one not wearing a uniform anymore, I guess. And I had the privilege and the absolute delight of soldiering with the kind of people you're talking about here, those sons and daughters of Canada, on an hourly, daily basis. And when I, as a senior commander in later years in particular, when I got worn down and when I was fatigued, my cure for that was to get out amongst those young men and women, wherever they might be, on a base in Canada, somewhere in the north, on a post in Afghanistan, on a ship at sea or an airplane in the air. And I got fired up all over again. If I was tired because of the little bureaucratic battles in Ottawa, I'd go off and in literally hours, I would be recharged. And I'd go back to Ottawa, not only ready to get into a battle, but actually go back to Ottawa so inspired that I'd go looking for fights to get into so I could win them. And it was because of those young men and women. And they fired you up. They had no reverse on that, right?
That's awesome.
They just believed in our nation like nobody else. They were proud of that maple leaf on their shoulder. They looked after each other. And it didn't matter them, man or woman, or the color of your skin, or what your orientation, your sexual orientation, or your gender. It mattered not. You were doing your job. You were part of the team. They'd look after you right to death's door. And you get inspired by those kinds of kids. They built our nation, right?
And they're so unassuming, eh, Rick? They're you know, they're unassuming. Is the only way I can describe them. They're not looking for anything. They're not wanting a pat on the back. They're just great people.
And I'll bet you the military, Rick would be the guy to tell us about this. The military has turned a lot of those people into that too, because they might not have been that way their whole life. They might not have been so respectful, et cetera, but the military showed them the way, and all of a sudden they became such better people by doing that. I'm sure, Rick, you've seen hundreds of kids like that.
You know, I remember one of our great sergeant majors one time talking to Prime Minister Paul Martin, and Prime Minister Martin was asking him, what kind of Canadian boy or girl were you looking for to be a soldier? And he said, you know, sir, we just want people with good values. We'll do all the rest. And good Canadian values, and we'll shape everything else. And we had what we call the boa constrictor method of socialization. You know, you put your arm around these young kids when they first join, and you tighten it a little bit more during basic training when you bring them into the ethos of what you're doing and the teamwork. And then you send them to their regiments, and that little arm gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And after a year, 18 months, 24 months, you know, 98% of them want to stay in the military for the rest of their life. And as a result, the military gets to pick and choose who they want, and you have nothing but the best campers, the best men and women in Canada from which to pick. And they develop, they're proud, they're confident, which is, you know, what a lot of young men and women don't have, because they've been through so much and they've succeeded, because you run them hard through the training just to see what kind of stuff they're made of, and you reinforce that strength each time, each step, and they're confident because they know they've conquered tough times, they can get through tough things, they know how to do it individually, they know how to work with a team, they know the importance of humor when you're tired and wet and cold and mosquitoes are flocking around you, and they know how much it means to be part of that, you know, that regimental family, that military family. And then if you should happen to support just a little bit their families outside of that, their personal families who stand beside them during the toughest of time, man, these folks want to be with you for the rest of their life. And it's their experience, and they become the awesome Canadians, Pete and Angela, that you just described.
Absolutely.
We've had so many moments. One of them I shared with you on that episode that we shot in Newfoundland together, Rick, about a young soldier that Pete and I were doing a commercial someplace in northern Ontario, and this brought me to tears. The story that this guy told us was just touching. I think we've got the video of it here somewhere.
So, Rick, we were earlier this year, we were shooting up in northwestern Ontario, and we're in this little town and doing a promo in front of like a general store. And the sergeant came over and introduced himself, and he said that he wanted to come over and thank Pete and I because we were a great help to him in Afghanistan. I said, what do you mean?
Back in 2006, I was over in Afghanistan, and me and a few other friends, of course, we did a lot of time outside of Kandahar, and when we got our opportunity to get back into Kandahar, we'd watch your show, and it gave us a lot of inspiration.
And they saw this episode that we shot on a little lake called Hasty Lake.
Yep.
And he said to the other boys, he says, boys, he says, when we get out of this mess, we've got to go to Hasty Lake.
And we did in 2007. And it was September, and it was just a wonderful experience. And even though we did catch some nice fish, I think it was just the fact that we were there, floating around the same lake that you and Pete were, really made it special for us. And I want to thank you, and my friends do as well, I'm sure.
And it moved me so much.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just completely floored.
People have to have something that they look forward to, anticipate with eagerness, love to wait to get to.
Yeah.
And whether that's coming home to family, or coming home to go fishing, or coming home to go skidooing, or any of those things. And when you do something which allows them to focus on it, you make a difference in them and their lives and how they get to a mission like that and how they come back healthy and safe and sound and sane and ready to get on and live the rest of their life, a normal life, if you will, back there, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible. You have to have those things to focus on.
I'm telling you, it just moved us.
Well, that brings back memories. That was,
Yeah, I forgot.
and I tell people this all the time. That, not for the fishing, but that was probably one of the most memorable shoots that I've ever had the privilege and honor to be on. And I mean, I'm not saying that because you're here with us now, Rick. I tell this story all the time. The fishing wasn't spectacular.
No, it was not.
It was tough. Let's be honest about it. But it is such a memorable experience, and I thank you for that, because it was you made it all happen. It was. And by the way, Pete, I think I told you this guy's a rock star in Newfoundland. This guy is a rock star. When people hear that General Hillier is going to be in town, they start assembling. It was wild.
Well, you have to be a rock star if you dress like that every night at this time of night.
That's
You know
right.
what I mean?
You got to dress the part.
Okay, let's get talking a little bit about. I want to know Rick's history in fishing. I mean, this obviously this is a fishing program, and we know Rick loves fishing. Tell the audience, Rick, a little bit of your history.
I grew up here in Newfoundland fishing, right? Fishing up on every pond and small lake in Newfoundland, and there are a million of them, is teeming with trout. Salmon River runs right into the little community where I grew up, where I am right now in Campbellton, Newfoundland. Level 2 river here, so grew up salmon fishing and grew up fishing for cod on the water, and actually for a couple of years doing a little tiny bit of lobster trapping and some of those other things. I was never a full-time fisherman, obviously. Lots of people around here did that as a livelihood, and I left home pretty young, but started off here fishing here in Newfoundland. And so that's what I've now come back to, actually, those same ponds and lakes when I can get back here at the appropriate time of the year, salmon fishing in that river, and of course cod fishing, as we talked about right at the start. That's a passion with me. I love it. We love it on the ocean every single day during the fishery season when it's open here, and we're out there. And every friend that we get to come visit with us, we got them out on the ocean trying to catch fish. But I say to them when we go a long ways out in the ocean here, and I say, okay, I just got to tell you one thing first, right? We're out in the North Atlantic here, and the current's all going. The next stop is kind of Iceland or Ireland. So if we break down, just remember you're in the boat with General Rick Hillier. And if I got on the net and said, hey, General Rick Hillier out here, we're broke down and we need a tow from the Coast Guard or search and rescue, in 10 minutes that would be right around Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'd never live it down. So I tell everybody gets in the boat, listen, prepare to die if we break down, okay? We're not calling for help.
Oh, that's awesome. That is a great story.
Awesome, but true.
It is.
I said it earlier on. We had a poll, Rick. Which of our maritime provinces would you either like to fish in or have fished in? And Newfoundland was one of them. And I said to people, unless you've been there, fishing in Newfoundland is different. It's different, and I don't mean I don't even know how I mean that, to be honest with you. It's more about the experience. There is so much more to it than just catching a fish when you're down there. Obviously, the people are the most genuine and open and friendly folks I say on the planet, and I don't care where you're from. You're never going to find anybody that is kinder than a Newfie. They're unbelievable and respectful people, and that adds to the fishing experience. It's all you know what I mean. It just adds to it. So it's not the fishing; it's really the entire package that makes it.
Angelo, I saw the poll, and for those who want to fish in Newfoundland, we're quite happy to be rated number 3 in the Maritimes. So it leaves the rivers uncrowded for us, obviously, right? But here's what I would say. I love Nova Scotia, and I love New Brunswick, and I love the province of PEI. But when you go there to fish, you're just dipping your finger into the population, into the culture, into the people. When you come to Newfoundland to fish, you're jumping into the ocean with them. And you're jumping into the population and the experience of that culture, the music, the food, the generosity, the friendliness, the inquisitiveness of the people here. Because we want to know everything about you if you've come from outside of the province. that's all part of the fishing trip, and you know that's equal or more in value than actually time on the water, dipping your hook, so to speak here. So it's a full body experience. It's a holistic experience here in Newfoundland to go fishing. But you know something, we're going to change it now. We've got the best advertising I think that you could possibly have for tourism Newfoundland, hospitality Newfoundland, and you know, phone John and come here. It's wonderful, and we're a little bit off the beaten track, and that is a little bit of a factor. We know that, we understand that, but we'll get more.
Are you open for business down there right now?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
No, I mean you cannot. Like we're part of the Atlantic bubble, Newfoundland. You know, there's a very famous song in Newfoundland. Thank God we're surrounded by water. We kind of like that about right now.
Right now,
Newfoundland is probably the safest place in the world to be right now with the pandemic. We got minuscule number of cases, almost all travel related. So when you come in, you have to either be a resident here, a worker, or own property here. And when you come here to self-isolate for 2 weeks to start with. But it feels very normal here. Yes, everybody's wearing masks. Yes, people are, social distancing and washing their hands and all those good things. But still, the stores are open, the gymnasiums are open. People are doing things, being careful, but doing things. And we feel very safe here. And we're not careless or complacent, just safe.
Jack,
hey, I'm going to give you something. You guys probably both know. Rick won't know this for sure, but Ange, I don't know if you know this or not. I have never been to Newfoundland in my life.
No, I know.
And I've never fished in Newfoundland in my life.
And yet people mistake you for a Newfie all the time.
Everybody, that's what I was going to say. Everybody asks, hey, Pete, where are you from in the rock there? Hey, bye. They say, all ask me that. They think I worked with so many guys, Newfoundlanders in construction. They all said, oh, where are you from over there? I was born in Toronto. But
we have 100,000 Newfoundlanders in Toronto. They must have infected you just a little bit.
Oh, I have the best work partners, the best work stories. I can't go into them, but the best work partners by far in my life were the Newfoundlanders. We had a riot. They made a work day go by real quick.
There you go, right there. Enjoy what you're doing. Have a sense of humor. It does make the work day go by quickly, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
By the way, Jack Summers says he's going to Newfoundland right after the pandemic, and I'm headed with you. So make sure you let me know when you're going, buddy.
And listen, and you have to come in. You have to come in a little earlier than the last time you came. Late August is a little late for the trout and the salmon fishery. The cod fishery is a little bit more extended now. But early August, late July, early August, great time to be here for the salmon. Great time to be here for the trouting, and great time to be here for the cod fishery. And no reason not to partake in all three.
You know me, Rick. I'm a straight shooter. Okay, there's a reason why I came in August. I wanted to avoid those black flies. My God.
That means you have to come in January, and really, that's not fun.
I remember shooting on. I don't know whether you're familiar with it, Rick. The Little Con River, I think it's called. Little Con River.
Of course.
I have never. It was great fishery, but I have never in my life encountered black flies.
Really, eh?
Oh, Pete, they were the only way I can describe it is overwhelming. It was just you couldn't even shoot.
And
the cameramen couldn't work. They were just completely overwhelmed. And that was early. I think that was I want to say early June sometime. But anyway,
wow.
We have black flies everywhere. Not to worry.
Rick, what's your favorite fish to go for? Let's say around Newfoundland and then worldwide or wherever.
And it's only the ones around Newfoundland. I love salmon fishing, Atlantic salmon. I've had a bunch of experiences at the fly-in fishing cottages on the Eagle River, for example, and Park Lake down in Labrador. And oh my goodness, I think 3 days fishing. I had, 48 salmon on it, and you're talking salmon, 15 to 25 pounds kind of salmon. The Atlantic fresh, and that's they were only about 10 to 20, maybe 25 kilometers in from the ocean. So they're still invigorated. Their energy levels are way high. So you hook a salmon like that, it's the most thrilling fight on the river. And in those 3 days, I don't think I went more than maybe 200 meters along the shore of that river. And that many fish, so they got to be that. I love cod fishing. I love being on the ocean. It's not necessarily sport kind of fishing, but hey, we eat what we catch, and I love being on the ocean and fishing, and like getting people introduced to it who come to visit from obviously mainland Canada. friends of ours who come in. I love doing that, so I enjoy that part of it. And trout fishing is always just fun. Always just fun.
Do you hand jig the cod still? Is that still the normal way for Newfoundlanders?
Yeah, you can hand line, but I use a rod and reel like I would say 95% of the people do now, rod and reel. And
Okay.
we fish anywhere 50 to 150 feet down. And if you hook on a 20-pound codfish at 150 feet down, hey, you got a job.
Yeah.
You're going to know that you're going to know that you hooked a 20-pound fish 150 feet down when you get it in.
And is it still jigging? Is it still like a jigging? Use the jigs, or is there different methods now with rods?
Use a small jigger, sometimes with a little bait on it, something to attract more. But a codfish is a predator, so if they happen to be feeding and you get in their feeding grounds, they like to hang out around the slopes of the cliffs, and of course every island here in the Bay of Notre Dame Bay, for example, where we have our house and where we go fishing. Every island slopes down like a steep mountain slide, so hundreds of feet underwater. And if you can find the right niche along the side there, like I say, in that magic 50 to 150 foot range, they like to hang out around the side there. You get into the midst of them, and you'll catch them if they're feeding. And if they're not, you won't even come close. You'll be out there all day. Wow. So yeah, it's always a challenge, to find out where they are, and of course you're on the ocean, so you're drifting through the fishing ground. So and you get 5 or 6 boats there, and you're all close together, and everybody's talking, and telling stories back and forth and hooking the fish, and then you drift through the ground. One boat will start up, move back over to the fishing ground again, upwind, and then the other, and we'll all move back up. A little flotilla, then you float back through, and then you come together as boats, and people will pass fresh buns and sandwiches and tea and coffee and maybe that excess fish that they have to help you out if you're down one. and it's a social community out there. It's wonderful. It's one of the most magnificent parts of the summer here.
That's fantastic.
I hate to get back to the soldiering thing, but I said at the beginning of the program, not that I hate to get back to it, I love the fishing stuff too, but I said at the beginning of the program that you were on the verge of another program that you're working on right now that I'd like to actually, I'd like to play the video if you'll let us, Rick.
Please, I'd appreciate that immensely. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm General Rick Hillier. I was Canada's Chief of Defense Staff from 2005 to 2008. Those were some of the proudest years of my life, and they were also some of the most difficult years during our war in Afghanistan. I was proud of our troops then, and I'm proud of them now. Everyone was a hero, some more heroic than others. And out of those, some 25 were awarded the Star of Military Valor, our nation's second highest award for valor. Not one of them, however, not a single Canadian soldier who fought in Afghanistan received Canada's highest military honor, the Victoria Cross. It's true, Canada created its Victoria Cross in 1993, and as a nation, we had decided it was time to celebrate our own. Except that we've never done it. We've never awarded Canada's highest honor, the Canadian Victoria Cross, to a Canadian soldier. So today I ask you to join our campaign to award a Canadian Victoria Cross to a soldier or soldiers who you judge deserving. We've identified 10 awesome heroes, each of whom have won the Star of Military Valor for their incredible courage in the face of the enemy. And over the next year, we're going to tell their stories and recommend that at least one of them be awarded a Canadian Victoria Cross. I'm asking you to join me in this noble effort. It will culminate on Remembrance Day 2021, a year from now, when we will bring you a television special that will tell their stories and allow you to judge whether one or more should be awarded a Canadian VC. So please share this video, like our Facebook page, and comment. We'll keep you posted, and we'll share with you those incredible, truly Canadian stories. And now to all of those who are serving, to those who have served, I thank you for that service to this great nation, and to the 37 million Canadians who call it home. I thank you for that service, and I salute you. We remember.
Beauty.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Well done.
Thank you for playing it.
So tell me about this. I'm intrigued by it. So in 1993, when this medal came out, if not our soldiers, who was it brought out for?
Well, it was brought for our soldiers, and it took a step from what was, the British Empire to British Commonwealth and the Victoria Cross. And of course, we have just less than 100 Canadians who have won the Victoria Cross in the Boer War, World War I, and World War II. Nobody in Korea. And then in 1993, we decided it should be the Canadian Victoria Cross. We got the medal from the guns that were captured at Crimea in the 1860s. We've made 10 of those Victoria Crosses. They're in the Royal Canadian Mint. We've not awarded one. And we think maybe, just maybe, we underscored, if you will, underestimated the bravery, the valor of some of our soldiers, and it's worth a relook. And we look at what our allies have done. Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain have all awarded Victoria Crosses during actions in Afghanistan. The United States has awarded medals of honor for actions in Afghanistan. And we have not. And we thought maybe myself, several young soldiers, a couple of producers, got a great team put together to look at this and say, we've selected 10 awesome heroes. And we're going to tell their story and tell what their citation sums up in, one small paragraph about what they did on a certain day or days and why that got them the Star of Military Valor. And we're going to say, let's just dig into the facts here a little more. Let's interview some of the people who were with them on that day. Let's, interview some of their commanders and some of their allies who were with them. And let's hear that story and tell it. And now you judge. Maybe that Star of Military Valor, we aimed a little too low. Maybe it should be the Victoria Cross, and why could we not bring pressure to bear to the government of Canada, say we're going to relook those citations and have a fresh look and perhaps award a Victoria Cross. We think it's worth it.
What's the criteria for that, Rick? Why hasn't nobody won it or awarded it so far?
First of all, there are a bunch of reasons I believe, and let's say I am guilty. I was the chief of defense staff for 2005 to 2008 during that fighting in Afghanistan. Number one was we were all new to war. I'll tell you that quite frankly. We were all learning from the most junior soldier in combat to commanders like myself, to journalists who were covering the war, to our politicians who were trying to understand what we had to do to achieve things. We were all learning. So perhaps we weren't as well prepared for those kinds of things of the recognition as we should have been or could have been or could be now. Number two is it's really tough when you're into the middle of a fight to get the citations and the appropriate write-ups for people's individual bravery and action. And you really, you could perhaps understand it. Something happens on day 27 of a 6-7 month tour of combat, and you hear about it, the act of bravery. It was incredible. You're trying to extract the information from the commanders and the combat. And meanwhile, they're in the midst of one battle after another with casualties and all the things that go with it. It's really tough to get the citations. And thirdly, there's sometimes, I'll take this one. I'll say mea culpa, my fault. Maybe we were a little bit like that infamous French figure skating judge who confessed in the Olympics that she kept her marks for all the Canadian skaters low so she could mark her own nation skaters higher. Maybe we were saving ourselves for that great citation that showed up that never did. And so there are a whole variety of reasons for it. I think no matter what the reason, there's no reason we can't go back and just reassess this and say, maybe we undershot and maybe we can reassess. And in our reassessment, I actually think that the story would change in one or two cases, perhaps even more, but one or two, and we would see fit as a nation to award the Canadian Victoria Cross. So I think it's a noble effort. I don't think it's much to ask the government to do. We need the Canadian population to be in support of it.
Why do I have the feeling, though, that even though it's a wonderful initiative and should be getting a lot of support, why do I get the feeling that it might not be?
Well, listen, my aim, I never admit failure here. My aim is that we're not going to give anybody a choice to say, hey, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the pressure so intense that somebody's going to have to look at it one way or the other and ask the military to reassess the citations and come forward with new citations, whether they're almost identical or not, but to come forward with it. I don't think Canadians, once they get a chance to hear those incredible stories. I mean, the story of young Private Jess La Rochelle, who was in his observation post and got hit with rocket-propelled grenades on the flank of his company. He's injured, wounded. Some of his fellow soldiers are dead and wounded. The observation post, their bunker, is destroyed, and he stays on the machine gun during an attack by a platoon of Taliban on that flank. He brings Fire the Bear with the machine gun. He fires single-use rockets to keep the Taliban at bay, knocking them off. And the company commander told me afterwards he went bounding up the hill to that observation post. He said it was destroyed, and he thought everybody inside was dead. And then he could hear the machine gun going. He got on his belly and crawled in, and there was Jess La Rochelle, covered in blood, covered in dirt and grime, with his buddies here, and he was still bringing Fire the Bear. That kind of incredible individual got the Star of Military Valor. Wouldn't Canadians like to hear a little bit more about that story and the other 9 that we want to bring?
That gives me goosebumps. Just
yeah,
listen.
I just had shivers too. That was.
I would love to see that story.
This young son of Canada, I think he was 19 at the time, may have been 20, but honest to goodness, he looked like a 13-year-old boy. I remember chatting with him. We had invited him to dinner, actually at the Governor General's residence, and chatting with him. And Paolo Actolini was there, one of the Actolini family who owns the Vancouver Canucks, and the Canucks were playing Ottawa in the playoffs here the next night. And he said, I got a couple of tickets. And I said, I can't go. But I said, if you want to give those to somebody really deserving, there's this young guy here with his girlfriend. And so Paolo called him over, and I introduced him, and he gave him the tickets. And afterwards, Jess came to me. He said, sir, I've never been to the I think it was the Canadian Tire Center at the time. Yeah. He said, tell me, are the tickets in the lower bowl, are they good tickets, do you think? I said, young man, let me just tell you, the owner of the Vancouver Canucks is giving you a pair of tickets to his team playing the Ottawa Senators. I guarantee you they're going to be good tickets for you and your girlfriend to go, and you go and enjoy it. Just an awesome young Canadian. He's had some tough times because of his injuries, because of what happened that day. But what an incredible story. And Canadians don't know it. We want to tell those stories too. And then we want to make this a pilot of more shows that tell stories of Smokey Smith, the Victoria Cross winner, of Padre John Foote, who won the Victoria Cross at Dieppe with such incredible valor and courage, and Piper Richardson, who during the Battle of the Somme, when we talked about this earlier with Gord's grandfather, who got up on the trenches and piped his company into action by firing them up by playing the bagpipes, and several days later was killed while carrying wounded soldiers back to the first aid post. We want to be able to tell their stories because Canadians don't know who built our country and what incredible people they were, and could get inspired by them. I think that's what's most important.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. If you can't get inspired by stuff like that, there's no hope for you, for sure.
And that's one, I call it a noble effort, and that's why we believe it is. And I'll do what I possibly can here to be able to tell their stories.
And we will do.
And we will do. I'd like to offer you our Pine Post production services. If you should need them down the road for this project, please reach out to us. I would like to donate our time and effort and our people to be a part of something like that. It'd be fantastic. So,
Angelo, that's a generous offer. Thank you, because right now we've got a vision. We've got the incredible, wealthy stories to tell about those incredible sons and daughters, and we have no money. So we're gonna need the third pillar in that post here.
How's that going to change? How are we going to change that?
Well, we've just started, so we're reaching out to a variety of the organizations that do documentaries. We're going to do that first. Well, we want to reach out to foundations and to Canadians who are perhaps a little more affluent than others and who have been supportive of good things for our nation in the past. And we're going to need people to give. And then maybe we'll reach out to Canadians at large and try a GoFundMe approach for some of the money. We're going to need quite a bit of idea to do this properly.
Once again, if we can help in that area, by all means, don't feel like you're a stranger. You're part of our family, and we would certainly like to help in this cause.
As we say in the Army, hoo-ah!
Thank you.
It right there, brother.
Can we just take? I mean, there's people asking all kinds of stuff. Can we just take a few questions from folks?
I'd be delighted.
Mike, if you want to just throw some stuff up, or for those of you viewing, if you've got any questions for General Hillier, by all means, we'll keep this going for a few minutes more, and we'll take it from there.
There's lots of comments. I mean, there's tons and tons of comments, and they're all this, basically support, 100% for support, et cetera, right? So,
Rick, just while we're waiting, do you have supporting visuals for these pieces?
Yeah, we have a lot, and one of the things we're going to do as we start, literally 2 days ago, we kind of launched this, right? So we're still in very, very, very nascent stages here, and so what we're doing is reaching out. There's a lot of stuff in the combat camera in the Canadian Forces, a lot of video and footage and pictures from the fighting and from the war in Afghanistan. Other individual photographers or news agencies that were there also have a lot, so we can get some of that. But we're also going to reach out to a lot of our individual soldiers, and we're going to ask them for their videos and pictures for those tours, because we know that there's so much of that out there that's been untapped up till now, and we want to be able to use that. So yeah, we have access to a lot. We know there's an enormous amount out there. The Canadian Forces will make the combat camera footage available for us, and that's most important. We can't do it without that. But then we're open. Our troops our veterans will pile in and show some of their private stuff.
Well, I think you're going to see some stuff coming out of the woodwork, man. I'll tell you.
Yeah, we'd be happy for that. That's for sure.
Can you imagine like the body cams off these guys, or whoever the soldiers were out there wearing their cameras and getting that footage? Oh my God, that would be something.
Yeah, you see some of that when you go on to YouTube or Facebook and those things, and you see some of those things. And we know there's a lot of footage. We want to be able to get access to what's important, and I think at the end of it, we'll find that we've got so much that it'll be just difficult to carve down into that small niche for each of the 10 stories that we'll have to tell.
Yeah.
A good friend wants to know, how effective was Canada's mission in Afghanistan overall? How would you rate it?
Well, I don't have a rating that goes from 0 to 100. Here's what I would tell you. I think it was incredibly effective in giving the Afghans time when the Taliban was certainly at its strongest to actually not be intimidated by them, and to give them time to actually start building some of the own institutions in the country that they had destroyed over the previous 35, 40 years. Afghanistan had been actually a fairly stable country, a fairly peaceful country, and compared in that Southwest Asia area, a fairly prosperous country. All that got destroyed over about 30 years. And what we were doing, I think, was keeping the Taliban off balance enough that they could actually start building and rebuilding some of those institutions. And whether it was their Ministry of Finance that could do budgeting process, their Ministry of Employment to actually try to rebuild some of the economy, the Minister of Agriculture to rebuild the agriculture industry that had been destroyed, or building an army or building a police force, we gave them time to do a good part of that. It's not finished work. It's imperfect at very best, but compared to where they were in the year 2001, it's absolutely incredible. The number of children in school, the number of girls in school for the first time in decades, the number of people who've gone to university and those kinds of things, the number of women in government. And I met the Minister of Health for Afghanistan, and it's a female surgeon. And she said she wasn't afraid of the Taliban. She carried a big knife, and if they had dared touch her, she would have made them pay, with their lives, kind of thing. And oh my goodness, she inspired me. So I think we gave Afghanistan, and most importantly, we gave Afghans a chance to do some of those things. It's an ongoing work. It won't be finished for 30, 40 years. Somebody keep saying, hey, we want to get in and get out in 5 years. Come on. We are a 150 some odd year old nation. We're still imperfect. We still have problems. We still have corruption. We still have scandals. And when we're curing it. And so it's going to take them a few years longer than that. I think we were successful in giving the Afghans a breathing space, is what I would call it.
Good. Very well put. Ken Johnson wants to know, what networks will the show be featured on? Do you know? Any ideas yet?
No, but we've reached out already. We've reached out to Chorus, and we've reached out to CBC. And, we want to see what people come back with. We think it's an incredible proposition. And we think, hey, if you're looking for Canadian, footage and Canadian shows, this is as Canadian as you can get, right?
Oh, yeah.
So who wouldn't want this, and who wouldn't want to support it financially? So we're uncertain yet, and that's what we'd like to resolve by, January, get our script and that all put together January, February, March, because we want to get that carefully done. Make sure we talk to the individuals that we want to work with to see that they do want to be part of this, and if not, we'd have to look elsewhere. And then film April, May, June, July kind of thing, get that all put together and be ready to go late August, early September, maybe at the Toronto International Film Festival or something like that, and then be ready to launch formally on 11 November. But, hey, I want to do this for our sons and daughters in uniform. I want to tell their stories with this great team we put together and do it, therefore, for all Canadians.
Nice.
There's an interesting question from Richard. Do you mind working with the USA?
Some of the greatest moments in my life, the most positive experiences of all, the things that actually made me feel good came while working with the United States of American Americans. I'll just give you this one example. Canada was in great difficulty in southern Afghanistan because I felt personally, and I know our government did, but I felt personally that NATO was not doing what it said would do in southern Afghanistan when we said we were going in as part of a NATO force. And in other words, they were short battalions in the south that should have been there that weren't. And I unloaded at one of the meetings at NATO. And, everybody, all the other chiefs of defense staff from the 28 nations many of them were kind of looking at the table and saying, oh, I wish he'd shut up or whatever. And after I stopped, it was silence in the room, except for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from the United States of America, who said, the United States of America will not stand by and see our great friend and ally, Canada, in trouble in the south. And the next day, a battalion moved in from Iraq to start working and give the extra firepower, literally, in the south, and additional resources started flowing into Afghanistan.
Wow.
We fought side by side, brother and sister, with our American friends and allies, and it was wonderful in almost every circumstance. And I think they probably say exactly the same thing.
Wow. Great story.
Blood brothers and sisters, quite literally.
Nice.
All right, last one. Russell wants to tell you he's a father of 3 children in elementary school. Is there any future education of new stories to help educate and let little people know what a true hero is?
Well, Russell, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell those stories of Canadian heroes. Again, Padre Booth, a chaplain, one of the most mild-mannered people, quietest individual you'd ever meet in your life. And on the 19th of August, 1942, on the beach of Dieppe with the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry, he started carrying wounded to the shelter of a landing craft that had been destroyed under open fire from the German machine guns and cannon on each side of the cliffs. He did that through the most of the day, and then he carried those wounded. When the tide came in and threatened to drown them, he carried them through the tide, through the water, to the boats to take them offshore. The last boat he got into himself, his commander said, "Hey, Padre, time to go. This is the last boat going back to England." He got in the boat, turned around and got back out of the boat and said to his commander, "These," pointing at the more than 2,000 prisoners of war, Canadian soldiers being taken by the Germans, "these, my flock here, needs me more than they do back in England." And he went into a prisoner of war camp for the next 3 years to serve the men that were taken as prisoners that day. Awarded the Victoria Cross for that, for incredible bravery. He came back to Canada, served as a member of the Legislative Assembly for Ontario, in Queen's Park in Ontario. And I think he died in 1965, but an incredible hero. Russell, we want to tell their stories. We want to be able to articulate them for Canadians from 3 to 300, if people grow that old.
When you hear stories like that, Rick, not to downplay it at all, but it makes our current situation just a little more easy to manage. I mean, those are stories that just they give you goosebumps if you don't get emotional about them.
They were asked to go ashore in the face of fire and almost certain death at times. We're being asked to stay home and sit on the couch. I think we can get this.
Yeah, well said, buddy.
General Hillier, I can't tell you how honored we are that you took the time to join us here the eve of another Remembrance Day, shared it with us, and we're thrilled to call you a friend. And as we said before, anything we can do to help you in your cause, you need but to reach out.
Angela and Pete and Mike also in the background here. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for continuing to be the supporters of Canadian soldiers and veterans and their families that you are. And thanks for the assistance of help. I guarantee you, we will call upon you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Take care, Rick.
See you, Rick. Wow.
Now you know why I came back from that Newfoundland shoot. I was just you spend 4 days with a man like that in a boat, in a fishing scenario, and the stories that he told Pete.
Yeah.
Because of course I would be poking at him all the time, like, what was your, freakiest thing? What's like, I was constantly, and the stuff he came out with,
and he's such a storyteller too. Like he is unbelievable when he talks. It's just like, oh my God, I'm glued to everything he says.
And I'm not kidding you. This man is a rock star. Everywhere he goes, people line up for days.
And so he should be. And so he should be treated as a rock star. You know what I mean?
I was absolutely humbled to spend that time with him. Just a wonderful guy. And I'll tell you what, the troops have got, as long as Rick is around, the troops have got somebody looking after him.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We won't let that memory go.
For sure.
Wow. Well,
that was a good one.
I enjoyed that show tremendously. I see folks feel the same way on the side. Hopefully we can do one of those a month. That type of program where we've got, and not that our other guests aren't great. Don't get me wrong, but like that one is just.
Well, that's a pretty special one. You got to admit that is, he's not only is he a hero or whatever you want to class him as, but he's a fisherman too. He's one of us. Is that what? He's a Canadian fisherman, a newfie. He's got everything going for him, bud.
Crazy. He doesn't give up, man. He stood on this one rock, and it was slippery and hard to deal with. He stood on this one rock for 4 hours straight during our shoot. Never got a bite. Never stopped casting. Just constantly working. The wind was blowing in his face, so you can imagine how hard it is to throw a fly out. We were using little light flies, and he stood on this slippery rock, trying not to fall off for 4 hours straight.
Oh my God!
That's how hardcore he is.
That's hardcore.
Anyway, we'll keep you informed. We'll keep the audience informed on how Rick is making out with that endeavor. I think it's a wonderful project. I know, for selfish reasons, I would love to see it completed because I'd love to be sitting on my couch and watching it. I think
that'd be a cool one to watch for sure.
Absolutely outstanding. So
and bring some knowledge to us too. These are stories none of us know about. And those guys in those 10 people that they've got up for this award, they don't even want to tell the story. Like, they don't care if everybody knows about the story. It's everybody else, like Rick bringing this story out to share with everybody. They're not like out there power monger saying, "Hey, look what I did. I'm Bobby Dazzler." That's not what they do. It's just not the way they are. So very cool.
Not many of those around for sure. I want to remind folks, we've got some exciting stuff happening on fishingcanada.com. We've got the Roland COVID story on there. If you haven't been there yet, the Sportsman Show recently announced the 2021 edition will now be canceled due to COVID, and they're going to be introducing a virtual Sportsman Show. Stay tuned for details, but you can go to our website now and check out the story. Garmin Striker Vivid. Talk to us about that, Mr. Bowman.
They've got, so Garmin being on just on the forefront of just putting out new and better and new and all that. They come up with new palettes, new color palettes on. So, for instance, the side view that we use out there, it's got that nice orange that we all like, amber it's called, or whatever like that. Well, now all of a sudden they've added, I think, 7 or 9 more palettes that are like a combination of colors, and it's just. And all that does is just makes it easy on the eyes. It makes it easier to work with. And certain people see things certain ways and that. So they've taken these Striker units, which are very affordable units, and they're given these screens now that are the most incredible, vivid coloring and detail that you would ever. For that money, it's incredible. That's all I could say. So we did a whole piece on that, and of course the Vivid is going to go through the Echo Map series, and I'm sure the GPS Map series as well. But it's just bringing an affordability out of this. Great picture of affordability. So it's a good little piece on the site.
And our good friends at Princecraft have unveiled their 2021 new boat lineup. How about that?
Nice.
I went on it yesterday. Went on their website yesterday. Very cool stuff coming up.
Nice looking stuff, eh?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Link in comments to General Hillier's valor in the presence of the enemy. Yes. By the way, I know we just kind of fluffed over at the beginning of the program about the fact that Rick is also a very accomplished author. If you're into historical writings and books and stuff, check out his. I think he's got 7 books on the market now. Every one of them is a collector's item, and he expresses himself just so wonderfully in them. You want to check them out.
No wonder he's a rock star. He's got 7 books out too.
Yeah.
On top of everything else he's done.
Maybe that's what you and I need to do.
We need to do that. Let's try and be a quarter of the rock star that Rick. We won't even make a 1/1000th of a rock star with him.
What's on the show this coming weekend?
Salmon of the Sioux, our buddy Steve Lidzwicki there. Hey, Ange.
Has he cut his hair yet?
I don't know. I honestly, he was on. Well, the only way he cutting his hair is if Buddy cuts it first.
Right.
He's not going to lose that bet. You know what I mean?
Anyway.
So him and Tyler down in Sault Ste. Marie, it's actually a very cool fishery. I mean, that St. Mary's River in Sault Ste. Marie, what a place! Multi-species with Atlantic salmon right in the city. Very cool stuff.
Pretty much the only place left where that is viable for freshwater Atlantic salmon.
That's right,
and it's perfect. So,
yes, sir.
Don't forget, share, like, do all those nice things. Subscribe. We need subscribers on our YouTube channel.
We need more subscribers, people. Come on. Our numbers aren't going up like we need them to go up. So we need you to either share, tell everybody about Fishing Canada.
It's bottom line, they don't like you or me. That's the bottom line.
Maybe they need more Steve Lidzwicki with the crazy hair.
Maybe. I don't know.
You know what I mean? They obviously don't like us, right, bud?
It looks that way. I mean,
I'm subscribed to Fishing Canada. I know you are.
By the way, Doug, yeah, of course. Doug wants to know, but Doug is way behind. Doug is asking, did we ever receive our cookbook?
Yeah, Doug, we did. I had mine here. I don't know where it is now. We did receive them.
I have mine here somewhere too. So absolutely. All right, folks, that's it for us. We got to run. It's another late evening, and I have a grandson that's waiting for me to celebrate his 12th birthday with.
Nice.
I'll do that.
Cake. Birthday cake, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Tyler Dunn, right there, guide extraordinaire up here in the Sioux, man.
Northern Ontario urban fishing. Sault Ste. Marie, Atlantic salmon right there.
Bullets.
Silver bullet, king of chrome.
Yeah. Look at the size of that fish, brother. See? Oh, look at There we go. Oh, baby.
Yeah, we got him.